Please welcome to the stage the United Nations Special Envoy for Global Education and former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Right Honourable Gordon Brown.
Let me first of all thank Henrietta. She has done more in a few months as head of UNICEF for girls' education with a wonderful team than, I've got to be honest, any man has done in decades of trying. So thank you, Henrietta. And let me also introduce to you for the first time as a global ambassador for Education Cannot Wait, the world's Teacher of the Year, Peter Tabici, who's with us today. Congratulations. And as I've said, by the end of the year, he is going to be as well known as Will Smith, whom you saw on the screen earlier. You know, on Friday, thousands of children walked out of school to make a protest that I applaud and we all applaud against what has been happening to our environment. Today, we have to protest on behalf of the millions of children for whom there was no school to walk out of. 260 million children who don't go to school today, 400 million children whose education will finish at 11 or 12, 800 million children, half the developing world's children, who will leave education without any qualification whatsoever unless we act to change this. And it is urgent, because what we now know is a tragedy emerging, that even in 2030, even on the date that the universal goal of quality primary and secondary education for all is to be met, there will still be, unless we act, 200 million children not going to school, and there will still be 800 million children leaving education without qualifications, and we cannot allow this to continue, and the message has got to go out today. This has got to stop. We are going to change things. And I want to remind you that more than half the refugees of this world, of the 13 million, are not in education today. More than half of the 30 million displaced children in all parts of the world, in every continent, are not in education today. More than half of the 75 million children who are in conflict zones are not going to school today. And only 3 out of every 100 refugee young people will ever have the chance of going to college or university unless we change things. And that is why today we have got to give the maximum support we can to Yasmin Sharif and the wonderful staff who run Education Cannot Wait. And everybody has a personal story to tell. Last year, I told you of the Moria refugee camp in Greece, where for young children, the conditions were so intolerable that teenagers of 11, 12, and 13, and this is unfortunately recorded as fact, were attempting suicide. And over the course of the last year, I've heard stories that show that this is not unique around the world. Children in different parts of the world, teenagers 13, 14, and 15, who are so devoid of opportunity, so devoid of hope, so desolate, so devastated about their own future prospects, that at the age when they should be looking ahead, optimistic, waking up, dreaming of the future, they are so desperate that they're driven either to attempt suicide or take suicide. So we're not just talking about places at school, we're talking about the future of lives. It's said that you can survive for 40 days without food. You can survive for 8 days without water. You can survive for 8 minutes without air, but you cannot survive for a minute without having hope. And hope dies, not just if a convoy doesn't get through with food to a deserted village, not just if a boat capsizes at sea. Hope dies if young people cannot grow up and are able to plan and prepare for the future because we have made no provision for school places for them to be able to enjoy. So I say there are 3 messages that have got to come out of today. We've got to expand Education Cannot Wait, because if we cannot say that every single refugee and every single displaced child will have the chances that other children have, then we cannot realistically say we are trying to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal which includes all children and not just some children. So give generously to Education Cannot Wait. Secondly, build the International Finance Facility for Education alongside GPE, alongside UNICEF, alongside the great work that all these organizations and UNESCO are doing. But with IFED, we can achieve 5 times as much with the resources we have because of the way we do it as a bank for education than we can in any other way. And that is the one chance we now have of getting the money necessary to deliver the Sustainable Development Goal by 2030. And thirdly, let us be a coalition of caring, where everyone, businesses who are here today, NGOs who are here today, international organizations, leaders from different countries, Minister Ulstein here from Norway, who are doing a wonderful job, and many other countries represented here today. Let us be a coalition of caring, and let us go out and say, we will be the first generation in history where every child goes to school. Instead of developing only some of the talents of some of the children, we will develop all of the talents of all of the children. You know, in ancient Rome, it used to be said of Cicero, the great orator, that when he'd given his speech, people would sit down and say, interesting speech. But in ancient Greece, when Thucydides spoke, people would say, not interesting speech. They would say, let's march. Let's march like the school children for universal education, every child, no one left out, no one losing out, and let's do it by 2030. Thank you.